Hi everybody, it's Judy here in lovely Thornhill. We're just going to wait for a few people to join us. How was your week? Mine was good. It was interesting. They always are. Today I was out for a walk with the big dog Chuck. And hey Gina, good to see you. And I actually was noticing that there were a few buds that were starting to show. It tells me that spring is around the corner. Judy, you're going to like that. Golf season's coming up, isn't it, girl? We are... Thank you for the thumbs up. Woo! I think maybe everybody is really frightened. Oh, there's Christine. Christine, we're going to be talking about your emotional vampires tonight. Thank you so much for the idea. I've spent a glorious day doing research and have followed all kinds of stuff that you do this research time and time again, and I have it all written down. I have all these books, because I have to write everything down, because if I don't write it down, it's gone. And so I have all these books with literally tons and tons of information. And every now and then I go through them. Oh, thanks for the heart. Yay! I go through these books just to think about, hey, Jen, there's Jen. Hey, wonderful to see you. Excellent, excellent. Emotional vampires, Jan, that's what we're going to talk about. Everybody's got emotional vampires in their life, don't they? They really do. They really do. So I'm just going to give it another minute or two, and then we are going to rippity-tear into the subject matter. So I had a couple people thank you for writing on the wall. I've now got the mindfulness in everyday life group. I've changed the settings so that the members are actually able to put posts on the wall. I still have to approve them, but there's been some fantastic feedback coming in about the sessions that I'm so thrilled, and I'm very touched at how these chats are impacting people, and it helps to get the algorithm sorted out in my favor if we have more comments. And hey Tracy, we have comments and likes and shares and different things like that. So the more enthusiastic and the more you share. I'm Marifin. I'm sorry if I have I hope I haven't and there's Vic. Hi Vic. There's a whole bunch of Vics out there right now. I think you might have been spammed at one point, my friend, because I got a request from you and was like, I'm already a friend of Vic's. How many Vic Jacutis can there be? But anyway, there's 3, and I only know you, so that's it. Anyway, okay, so let's get going. It is 9:04. I'm not particularly patient. Now, I have been making an effort to keep these sessions to 25 to 30 minutes at most. I'm doing a new manager training, or Manager 2.0, in the middle of the week, And I have absolutely been trying to keep those at 25 minutes. So I've got a clock moderately handy. So if you see my eyes slinting over to the side, I'm wanting to make sure that I'm not taking too much of your time. So emotional vampires. Emotional vampires. There's a lot of material out there, which tells me there's a lot of emotional vampires. And as I said earlier, we've all had them in our lives, and they come in all kinds of shapes and forms. Let me tell you about, so there are two main authors that I'm actually going to be speaking their work, and then of course, you know, the experience that I've had with dealing with them, and the experience I've had with coaching people who are dealing with emotional vampires, both in the workplace and at home. I think, and I'm not sure which is more difficult to deal with, the workplace or family. I don't know, because emotional vampires are extremely challenging to deal with, and that's not something that is a big news flash for you. But the two authors, and on my website I've actually got links to the books that I'm talking about. Just makes it so much easier. The first one is Albert Bernstein, and he has a couple different books out, and he actually uses humor. His books are around, you know, emotional vampires, literally emotional vampires in the workplace. Both these are psychiatrists, both these resources. So there's some psychiatric language, DSM-6, whatever it is now, that, and if you can cut through that, hey Martha, that would be fantastic. And then Judith Orloff, she is a psychiatrist, and she speaks more about protecting your sensitive self to these. They're like icebreakers going through life. They don't really care who they move around or whatever they do. They have goals and plans. So I will put on the I'll put on the log after we're all finished what the website is. Well, my website is, because I've got a few, and that way you can have a look. Oh, grandkids made brownies. Uh-oh. Okay, so we'll talk to you later, Jan. Thanks for stopping by. Anyway, so you can see the books, and they're I've got both of them. I've got them on my Kindle, and they're really interesting reading, and certainly you know, it will increase your toolkit, your workplace toolkit, but also your family toolkit, because emotional vampires do come in families as well. All right, so let me get to my notes. And so emotional vampires are often, with the exception of one, and I'm going to talk about the different kinds, but emotional vampires are often, they feel victimized, and they then go on to create victims. So they are reacting negatively to what they perceive as their victimhood. And in that comes some of their psychology that is a little bit messed up. So it's, you know, it's a right place to talk about emotional vampires in terms of mindset, because that is part of their mindset and their belief systems and their values that are not serving them well. They serve a purpose for them, but it is it's pretty dysfunctional. And maybe it'll help if I go through the 4 different kinds. So I'm not going to go with the psychiatric language, because that is pretty snoozy. I'll have to say, it's not very exciting. So the first one, and how very timely that we're talking about emotional vampires, is the narcissist. And, you know, we've got some fairly hefty examples of narcissism front and center everywhere. But these are the people that they're me first. They cannot get enough talk about themselves, or they can't get enough information to keep their self-worth and their big egos in check. They're extremely self-important, and they crave attention. The thing with narcissists is they have little to no empathy for other people. So this particular one, narcissists are really, they're the most difficult to deal with, because it's a form of their, dysfunction, their psychology. I don't want to call it stronger language, because I don't. But to cope with these folks, you actually have to get them to the point where when they are interfering with you or bothering you, you have to turn things around so it looks like they've got the best idea, because they have to have their ego stroked. They have to be the center of attention all the time. Now, with narcissists, likely the only way that you can deal with them fairly effectively, whether it's in the workplace or at home, is to set some very clear boundaries. And keeping in mind that when you set boundaries, sometimes people are offended by those. Most of the time they are. So, for example, if you have someone who is always giving you advice when you're not asking for it, you may need to tell them that things like, and there's all kinds of different ways to set boundaries. There's blunt ones, and I would always start off with probably the more sensitive of the two, but thanks for your feedback. I'm going to take that into consideration, but I've got to work this through myself. I've got to get going. So thanks very much. Not a good time to chat right now. Got to go. Setting boundaries. When you have them within the family, sometimes, and narcissists are so difficult because it's pathology. It's tough stuff. But setting boundaries and sometimes staying out of their way. And if you're unfortunate enough to have somebody like a boss that you report to that is like that, sometimes you have to leave. That doesn't sound particularly helpful, but there's only so much that you can do. And very often, these kind of folks who are needing so much attention they're very difficult to manage. So I'd be very interested in anybody else's opinion and thoughts on this, if they've actually, we know what a narcissist looks like. We've got one on the TV every day. We see. There, I said it. I wasn't going to say it, and there, look at me. I have absolutely no impulse control. All right. The second kind of emotional vampire is the victim. And that is someone who is always on a toot about something is always wrong. Well, that hit a few chords because I got a heart and a thumbs up on that. So thank you very much. That the victims, they're always the ones that they tell the same story over and over. And I actually had a situation a number of years ago where it was a new person in my life, and they had this kind of rant that they used to go on, and it was often followed. it often, yes, I know you know that one well, Gina. I met a few of your former staff, coached a few of them too. That was tough sledding. Anyway, these folks, they, after a drink, this storyline would come up. I had to snap back into where I was at. And it was the same story, almost verbatim, but it was on and on and on. So finally, I actually had to say, you know what? You've had the same conversation with me on at least 2 other occasions. And nothing has changed. So I don't think telling it to me the 3rd time is going to make a difference. What it does is it just creates a really negative mood, and I'm kind of not into that. And that was the end of that. That was the end of that. Now, I know, because I know this style of person, that it will come up again, but I will nip it in the bud even quicker. These are the kinds of things with the people who are victims. You can offer, like, well, what would you like to have happen? What do you think needs to happen? How can I help you with that? Do you have any ideas about what you'd like to do? Do you want to bounce some things off, brainstorm, or whatever? And if they don't, which is what victims often like to do, is they just like the story. They like the idea of getting that attention for that story or those stories, because you know darn well, once you solve one issue, another one will pop up. It is their approach. So, with that, you can start out with trying to provide support, but you know darn well it's not going to have a huge impact unless the person doesn't realize that they are an emotional vampire. There's always that possibility. Always that. Hi, Colin. So if they don't, you think that they, I don't know how they wouldn't know, but sometimes people, they're not very insightful into their own behavior. And they don't realize that they are, they bring a mood down. And how do you know when you've had an emotional vampire experience? Well, usually it is when you feel like you just feel tired. You just want to go have a nap. You're exhausted. Your eyes get really droopy. You feel like you've literally had any positivity, like somebody's taken a fun syringe and emptied your entire body of that. You are without energy, without ideas, creativity is gone. You're just kind of, a bag of skin sitting in a chair, hoping that something fun's going to happen. You've been slimed. You have been slimed by an emotional vampire. I remember a really good friend of mine had a mother-in-law who used to do all kinds of passive-aggressive kinds of things. And this mother-in-law used to say things to my friend like, "Oh, you're probably going to want a salad." "Oh, Barb, you like bag of skin. You're probably going to want a salad. I see you've had a little trouble losing your baby weight." And with a big smile, just like smack. That's emotional vampire, passive-aggressive kind of stuff. I'm jumping ahead here, but those are the kinds of stories you hear about. Okay, so also when you're talking to these victims, keep really close body language. Don't encourage them. Like, cover your heart. Cover your heart. Oh, Christine, you're back. Make sure that and when you've had an experience with one of these folks and you've set some limits around, okay, you're starting to feel like you need a nap, then make sure you end that interaction. And you need to do something to refresh yourself, like go outside and listen to the birds chirping, get some fresh air, go for a ride on your horse. So Barbara's saying, have you heard of gaslighting? That's where someone makes you think you are insane and they are normal. I have too many of those people in my life. No. Well, I have heard a little bit about it. I had an ex-husband who tried to convince me I was a little crazy. But that didn't work out. No, I haven't heard of gaslighting. It's a tactic in which a person or entity, in order to gain more power, makes a victim question their reality. It works much better than you think. Anyone is... Come up. No, I can't scroll. Gaslighting. Whoa. Has anyone else ever heard of gaslighting, or is it just Barb, the super therapist, that knows about that? I do know of people who are so they're so horrid that they do try to convince, and it is there's a couple stories I could share, but I don't think I better. It would be not appropriate. That's quite interesting. Quite interesting. Okay, so the third type of emotional vampire is the controller, the one who is always. They need to control how you feel, how you think, what you do, how you do it. In a workplace, that can be a micromanager, like a mega micromanager, not someone who's just a wee bit intrusive, but micromanaging. How you doing now? How you doing now? How you doing now? And over your shoulder, and should you be doing that? Should be doing that. And on the mindfulness in everyday living, Christine was saying about, a report that, if you send in a report that the person is, that they are always looking for something wrong with it. I actually had, when I was in children's mental health, but not in the treatment side, but in the HR side, I had a director one time that used to mark reports with a red pen. And I was saying to her, what, are you a teacher? Or are you attempting to get me engaged in this whole process? That, because it had that feel of, you're wrong. It was little red marks here and there, and it was like, what the hell? I'm out of grade 6. That kind of thing, that controlling. And people like that have a tendency to say things like, I know what you should do. Or, if it were me, I would do it this way. Assuming that you're going to leap right on that. Anybody have any exposure to any of those kind of people in their lives? No, I'm not seeing any thumbs or hearts. Okay. Oh, there's the therapy cat. He's been sleeping. There he is. Okay. So the thing with a controller is you never want to tell them that they're wrong. Here he is. Here's the boy. My son was saying the other day that Wiley should have his own Facebook Live session. You just sleep through it, but that's okay. You'd sleep on various shoulders. So anyway, you never control a controller. You just can't. They need to feel that they've been heard, but you then have to and never ever play the victim with these folks, because that just exposes weakness, and then they're just going to have to take over your life. Yeah, I like this phrase. You could be right, because it means he or she could also be wrong. It's so very true, Barb. I love that phrase. You may have something there. And, that's those kinds of vague phraseology are really about the only way that you can set some boundaries respectfully. And then you can only do that for so long, and then you have to set boundaries very firmly. And I know, within families, often we have to, we sometimes use avoidance, because that is a way in which nobody's feelings get hurt. I know my mom was, well, besides my mom being a saint, everybody who knows me knows that, but my mother she knew how to help you along in the area of feeling guilty if you misbehaved, which I had a little bit of a habit of doing when I was younger. And so she would, she would kind of do a little bit of guilt trip. And as I got a bit older and had less and less tolerance for feeling badly for something I was doing, but that's who I was, that's what I wanted to do, is I did a little bit of avoiding, not a ton, but a little bit. And, that's sort of like telling a little white lie kind of thing. It's a gentle way of not tackling something head on. But now, at my lovely age and stage, I will say, are you trying to make me feel guilty? Because I'm not. I'm not feeling guilty. And, I see your point. I don't always necessarily, doesn't mean I agree with it. So the controllers in your life, they can be quite passive aggressive. And that comes out in that, oh, you're probably going to want a salad because I see you're having some trouble losing weight. Yikes! Yikes! That's a very, very controlling, very bad behavior, very bad behavior. Then the final one is the splinter or borderline personality. And these people, they are the ones that run hot and cold all the time. So, they get nice, and all of a sudden they just like wham. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Kate. That those folks, they're hard to get a handle on because they just kind of keep you guessing. They're skilled. They're very, very skilled at pitting people against one another. They have a tendency to like to stir nonsense up within the office. They're the ones that will create, oh, thank you. They create little packets or pockets of people that get along and some don't. And, I really am a very empathetic, gentle person. But as an HR person, when I see some of these kinds of behaviors, I don't try to remedy them. I move people out. And if you are in a managerial role, that is the one thing that we also talk about in the manager training work that I do, is when you have emotional vampires, you need to have a very, very clear strategy of minimizing their behavior in the workplace, or you have to move them out, because the impact of emotional vampirism is a defeated, deflated, exhausted workforce. That how can you even think about being engaged in your work when you're exhausted? So with these borderline personality, that splinter group, that the ups and downs and all over, and they're kind of like manic vampires. They're happy, and then they're negative. And they always recruit. They always like to have other people that help them do their dirty work. And I took over a group in Toronto at one point. My first really senior role. And the team that I inherited, one of the people who was on the team had actually applied for the job that I had gotten. And, I was not from the inside. I didn't come from another department. I came from Mississauga. That I was referred by one of my former staff who was a staff member in there, and I did some consulting and then was hired. And I had that kind of up and down with the one staff who wanted the role and wasn't actually even interviewed, because my manager recognized that this was not someone who could manage people, and we had to move her out because it was just negative. Thanks, Barb. Barb sending me an article about the gaslighting. Very, very, very interesting. Okay. So with these people who are up and down, the whole idea with them is to stay calm and stay unengaged. Disengaged, unengaged. Not sure what the right word is there. Because they are looking to press your buttons. And so if they are pressing your buttons, think, okay, they're pressing my buttons. And rather than go out and, get a pound of jujubes and eat them like I've done before, is to recognize that you've just had your buttons pushed. Sort of like having your bell rung, but in a different kind of way. It's an emotional way rather than a physical way. And there are times when you actually have to say, I'm going to come back when you're calmer, because you're not, the conversation isn't going to go anywhere good if we start to chat now, because, with these emotional vampires, you can't engage at the level that they like to engage in. You just can't do it because, because it makes you sad that nobody wins in those situations. Absolutely right. She CC'd my boss when she pushed my buttons. Yeah. No, they do that. That's the recruiting, right? They like to recruit. And you got to watch those damn recruiters. So let's talk about, because we're at 34 minutes. So let me talk about, there's a couple things that you can do, but there isn't, there is firstly, if you're around a narcissist, get away, don't marry one, don't be in a relationship with one, and often as a friend, they're very difficult people to be around. And I always try to recognize that the words they are saying and the way they are acting says a ton more about them and very little about myself. That is so true. But you know what? You have to get to our age, Barb, to figure that out. Well, it takes we probably figured it out a few years ago, but it's still smarts when you have people that are doing really horrific things that, they're trying to make you feel less than who you are. They know your buttons because these people are smart. That's why I keep saying, they got to know that they're creating havoc everywhere they go, because they are smart. To be that devious, you have to know what people's on buttons are, and age is a wonderful thing to help with the I don't give a shit factor. It certainly helped me. And then throw a couple real life tragedies in there, and oh man, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't matter anymore. So part of what I want to do with these, with these Facebook Live is to share some tips so that you don't have to wait till you get to this lovely close stage to middle age to be able to deal with some of these folks. So let's talk about a few things that you can do. Is the first thing is when you are having your buttons pushed, and you will know it because you're going to feel your heart race, you're going to get hot, you're going to want to say nasty things, you're going to want to maybe even smack them, but you don't do any of those kinds of things. You recognize that you've just had your buttons pushed. So you step back and you slow down a wee bit and think, all right, all right, all right, all right. Because you can never change these folks, but you can manage how you react to them. Never let them get into your head, because that's where they do their damage. So if you can step back and just kind of, breathe deep. And that's sometimes when people have those elastics on their wrists and they're like snap, 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 snap. There's a lot of things you can do mindfully, which is, sometimes counting your breath and just saying, I'm just going to need to take a minute. You've said a lot. I just need to digest that. Take a little bit of time. Do not give an emotional response, because that's what they're looking for. That's what feeds this beast. That's the blood of the vampires, is the emotions and the button pushing and those kinds of things. Keep quiet. Keep quiet, because you cannot contribute anything that is going to solve the issue. Thank you for the heart. Love them. I love those little things. You will just get into their psychology, and you can't win, because many of these people they're not psychologically healthy. They have a lot of issues, some of which can be dealt with if they choose to, but a lot of them choose not to. The third thing is ask for time. So if you have someone who is demanding, and getting all over you, and you're not in a position where you can actually kind of walk away, ask for time to be able to allow them to settle themselves down, to allow yourself time to figure out your strategy and sort of get those buttons that have been pushed, bring them back out, and prepare yourself. Get your armor on, get your emotional armor on, and go forward. There's Jan's back. I'm learning how to react better the older I get. It's always easier to keep quiet, but I'm getting better. Yeah, we were just talking about that, Jan. Is that it is easier to stand down from some of that stuff the older you get. And the fourth thing to do with these kinds of emotional vampires that you may deal with is never explain yourself. Never explain yourself. Do not humble yourself to these people. Do not try to explain your thinking, because they will simply poo-poo it or pull holes in it. And you then are again, look at this is hitting home. You are then again getting all your buttons pushed again. So you become like an accordion, for God's sakes. You just like, blah, 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 blah. Never explain. You take it in, and you think all those interesting thoughts you're thinking. And sometimes you actually, there is a time where you think, gee, like, that would be tough to be them. I wouldn't want to be them. Thank goodness I'm me, and I'm sensitive, and I'm aware, and I'm emotionally intelligent, and I'm an avid learner, and I care what people think about me. And so those are really of the research that I did today. That was kind of the summation. Does that make sense to everybody? If you can give me a thumbs up or something, if what we've just talked about has made sense while I blow my nose because my cat's in my face. Oh, there they come. Okay. All right. Good. I'm very glad, because emotional vampires are really, really challenging. And we should probably do a little chat about how to know if you're an emotional vampire, because every now and then, we may fall into that. Yikes! But I think you have enough information. So if you're thinking, along a way where you hear yourself complain about something a number of times and there hasn't been, there hasn't been any change in it, that you might be just kind of stuck in an issue, and it's not pathology. It's just, we all have those moments. But anyway, we are now at 9:40, and I have exceeded the time that I was wanting to take of yours. I am open for suggestions. Thank you so much, Christine, for asking about this subject matter. It was really fun to research, and it's always good to have these little reminders, because these folks step up and interfere in our lives every now and then. So, Wiley, can you say goodnight? Can you say goodnight, buddy? No, he's not coming out. He's very shy. He's very shy. All right, so I don't have a topic for next week, but I will come up with one. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks for coming, everybody. Bye, bye, bye.